Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a weird, wonderful contradiction that lives in your very cells. Picture this. You're sprawled on a sun-warmed beach, drink in hand, zero notifications, waves humming in the background, pure bliss. And yet within an hour or two, you're fidgeting, checking your phone, wondering what's next. This isn't some personality flaw, it's biology. You are hardwired to crave pleasure, but paradoxically, never truly hold it. The moment you get what you want, your nervous system quietly resets the goalpost, like trying to fill a bathtub with the plug missing. Brief satisfaction, slow leak. You were built to pursue the good life, not live in it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while we're at it, drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Always love seeing the global bedtime club come alive. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through life like most mammals with a brain, nose first in the dirt, chasing something tastier than yesterday. Not literal dirt, hopefully, but you get the point. Hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure for its own sake, isn't just a lifestyle, it's your default mode, at least until your body calls a timeout. Because right beneath the craving lies a colder, stricter system, homeostasis. It doesn't care how happy you are, it cares how balanced you are. Like a neurochemical hall monitor, it watches your internal temperature, sugar levels, heart rate, stress hormones, and mood chemistry, and adjust things accordingly. You may want to feel amazing all the time, but your body wants stability. Let's say you eat a triple scoop ice cream sundae. Your dopamine spikes briefly. Then your insulin rises to compensate for the sugar. Your blood sugar crashes. You feel sleepy, maybe even cranky. That's homeostasis, dragging you back to a safe middle, no matter how far you sprint toward bliss. So why does this matter? Because the more you try to engineer non-stop pleasure, through food, luxury, relationships, even success, the more this quiet system pulls you back. Hedonism and homeostasis exist in constant tension. One is the gas pedal, the other's the brake. Here's a thought experiment. Imagine a life of pure pleasure. No hunger, no cold, no boredom, just comfort on loop. At first that sounds like paradise. But give it a week and you'll start inventing drama, picking fights or searching for a new thrill. Scientists call this the hedonic adaptation effect. You get used to the good stuff fast, like a frog in a jacuzzi. You barely notice the heat creeping up, but it never stays satisfying. Still, that hasn't stopped humanity from trying. Enter the dopamine economy. Food delivery, social media, binge streaming, dating apps, each offering a little squirt of pleasure, but none can outrun your internal thermostat. And that's where things get a little grim. You might spend your life pursuing high after high, not realizing your baseline always resets. It's not your fault, it's your wiring. And here's the spooky part. Even winning doesn't win. Get the job, buy the car, marry the person, then sit with the creeping, slightly guilty question. Is this it? That emptiness isn't failure, it's biology. Your reward system isn't built to let you arrive, it only likes movement. One mainstream fact? Studies show lottery winners return to their pre-win happiness levels within a year. Same goes for paraplegics. Up or down, your mood rebounds to what researchers call your effective set point, a kind of emotional homeostasis. Temporary highs, temporary lows, but the average? Maddeningly stable, a quirky fringe tidbit. Some ancient Romans kept a slave near them during victory parades to whisper, "Memento mori," remember you will die. Why? Because even triumph had to be tempered. Too much pleasure felt dangerous. Even the ancients sensed the seesaw. And what do scientists argue about today? Whether homeostasis is best viewed as a defensive mechanism, or an adaptive one. Is it just stopping extremes? Or is it sculpting your behavior over time? The answer might change how we approach everything from therapy to technology design. So what does all this mean for you, curled up right now trying to get sleepy? It means that pleasure, while lovely, is slippery, and if you define your life by chasing it, you may never feel like you're actually living it, because the system designed to keep you alive isn't concerned with your joy, it's concerned with your survival. Your thirst for more will always run into your body's desire for enough, which sets up a profound tension. You're a creature designed to want, but also a creature designed to return. And the space between those two instincts, that's where most of your modern suffering lives. But don't worry, we're not ending here. Because once you understand the trap, you can start playing the game differently. And that's what we'll explore next, how evolution wrote the rule book, and how you're still stuck reading it. You're a miracle of natural engineering and a prisoner of evolutionary fine print. You see, evolution didn't sit down one day and say, let's create a happy, balanced, spiritually fulfilled being. No. It said, let's create something that doesn't die too quickly. That's it. Your entire existence is sculpted not by what feels good, but by what works well enough to pass your genes along. Everything else is side effects. That little glimmer of joy when someone texts you back, evolution's way of nudging you to seek connection. The pride you feel after a win, just a trick to keep you competing. The dopamine that fires when you eat warm bread, pure survival math. None of it's designed to last, only to guide you from one adaptive behavior to the next. You live under an unspoken contract. You get small pleasures but no permanent satisfaction, because satisfaction means stillness, and stillness in nature often means extinction. So here you are, wired to keep moving, not necessarily toward greatness or meaning or enlightenment, just toward more warmth, more food, more status, more sex, more novelty. And homeostasis tags along like a neurochemical parent constantly muttering, not too much, let's keep it in the safe zone. Take body temperature. It hovers around 37 Taras, 98.6 Fair for most people. Get too cold, you shiver. Too hot, you sweat. Seems simple. But underneath that is a vast cascade of sensors, hormones, and fail-safes. If your internal temperature goes just a few degrees off, you die. That's homeostasis. Now replace temperature with pleasure. That same safety mechanism kicks in when you go too far in any direction, high or low. Your biology doesn't want spikes, it wants predictability. But your mind, it wants fireworks. Therein lies the problem. Mainstream science fact, your hypothalamus, the brain's command center for homeostasis, regulates everything from appetite to emotional arousal. It's basically your internal thermostat, mood manager, and hydration police, all rolled into one. It even affects your motivation, which means your ambitions are always under its jurisdiction. Yes, even your dreams are body-regulated. Quirky tidbit? In 1954, scientists accidentally discovered the brain's pleasure center while poking around a rat's hypothalamus. They installed a little lever the rat could press to stimulate that area. The rat abandoned food, water, and sleep just to press the pleasure button. Eventually, it died from sheer overindulgence. Hedonism, unbound from homeostasis, self-destructed. Sound familiar? You've probably had your own version. Ever doom-scrolled TikTok at 2 a.m.? Stomach growling, neck cramping, but unable to stop? Yeah, you're not that different from that rat. The lever just looks cooler now. Scientists still argue whether our modern tools, smartphones, sugar, porn, streaming, are just tapping ancient pleasure circuits or rewiring them entirely. Either way, your reward systems weren't designed for infinite stimulation, and yet evolution never anticipated Netflix. Now let's zoom out. Before the iPhone, before cities, before even fire, you were once a small, soft creature in a dangerous world. Life was short, food was rare, nights were cold. Back then, pleasure was tied tightly to survival. Fatty foods meant winter survival. Social approval meant protection. Sex meant reproduction. Pleasure was permission to rest after doing something essential. But now, that survival code runs on modern hardware. The environment changed. The code didn't, so you still seek fat, sugar, approval, novelty. Only now, they're everywhere. Cheap, constant, addictive. And here's the weird kicker. The better you get at satisfying your cravings, the more hollow the result feels. Why? Because you've outpaced evolution's reward loop. Your ancestors earned their dopamine. You tap a screen and get it instantly. The pleasure's still there, but the meaning behind it, gone. So your brain adapts, raises the bar, dulls the receptors. What once thrilled now barely tickles. You start needing more just to feel the same. That's tolerance, and it's not just for drugs, it's for everything. Love, success, beauty, food, novelty, power. Think about it. That job you once dreamed of, now it's a Monday grind. That person you once ached for, now they forget to rinse the dishes, and you fantasize about escape. That new gadget you bought, it's in a drawer now, next to last year's dopamine hit. And still, you chase more. You're not greedy, you're human. The saddest part, this constant loop isn't optional. It's your biological inheritance. Your pleasure is rationed not by what's available, but by what your system lets you feel. And that system is stingy, because evolution rewards survivors, not daydreamers. So what happens when your pursuit of pleasure hits a wall? Maybe you start blaming yourself. You think, if I just worked harder, earned more, found the right person, traveled to Bali, took up cold plunges. But the truth is, you're not broken. You're behaving exactly as evolution intended. Wanting, chasing, resetting. But now, unlike your cave-dwelling ancestors, you have the luxury to notice the pattern, to name it, to say, I'm trapped in the loop. And that, my sleepy friend, is the first real power you get in this whole arrangement. You don't escape evolution by hacking the system. You escape it just a little by understanding the contract. You can't break it, but you can renegotiate the terms. So next time your cravings whisper promises of eternal joy, remember, they're just echoes of ancient instincts trying to operate in a modern world. And your body, it's still pulling levers behind the curtain, making sure you don't feel too good or too bad for too long. Because in nature's eyes, balance is everything, even if it means sacrificing bliss to preserve the baseline. Let's talk about dopamine, not because it's trendy, but because it's quietly controlling half your waking life and you probably don't even realize it. Dopamine is often called the pleasure chemical, which is a cute oversimplification. It's not pleasure itself, it's the anticipation of pleasure. It's the tingling itch before the scratch, the forward-leaning hunger, not the bite. And your brain is absolutely obsessed with it. When you wake up, dopamine is already at work. Checking your phone? Dopamine. Daydreaming about lunch? Dopamine. Flirting, scrolling, fantasizing, even procrastinating, all driven by that sly neurochemical whispering. Something better is coming, maybe just around the corner. But here's the trap. Dopamine doesn't care whether you get the reward. It only fuels the pursuit. That means you can spend days, weeks, even years chasing something that never delivers and still feel compelled to keep going, because the chase is the drug. Your ancestors relied on this chemical compass to forage, hunt, explore, and survive. If they waited to feel motivated after the reward, they'd starve. So evolution wired them and you to get energized before success. This is why planning a vacation often feels better than the actual trip. It's why the fantasy of a relationship can be more thrilling than the reality. It's why the buzz of wanting something is sometimes stronger than the joy of getting it. Mainstream fact: dopamine is released in waves when you predict a reward, not when you receive it. Your brain's reward circuitry lights up most when you're close to getting what you want. The win itself? A brief fizzle, then silence, then the loop restarts. Quirky tidbit: in one experiment, monkeys were trained to press a button to get a treat. The closer they got to the reward, the more their dopamine spiked. But once they got the treat, dopamine plummeted. Sometimes they'd stop caring about the treat altogether, so long as they could keep pressing the button. Sound familiar? Think about social media. You open TikTok or Instagram not because it always delights you, but because maybe, just maybe, the next post will. Swipe. Nothing. Swipe. Meh. Swipe. Ah, there it is. Your brain doesn't mind sitting through 90 duds to get one juicy dopamine hit, because the anticipation is the experience. And this isn't laziness or lack of discipline, it's deeply human. Now, here's where it gets darker. When your dopamine system is constantly overstimulated, it starts to desensitize, like an overused credit card with a dwindling limit. The same stimuli start producing smaller and smaller hits. This is why things that once excited you now feel dull. It's also why you need louder music, faster edits, stronger coffee, hotter takes. Scientists still argue whether this dopamine desensitization is permanent, or if it can be reversed with rest and intentional behavior. Some believe your receptors regenerate, like a burned-out field eventually growing green again. Others think long-term overstimulation may create a new set point, one that's harder to lower. In plain English, you might need more to feel less. You're not addicted to dopamine itself. You're addicted to the promise it makes. And that promise? It's slippery, uncatchable, like trying to hold fog. And yet you keep reaching. Let's map this out in your daily life. You think about ordering food. Dopamine. You scroll the menu. More dopamine. You place the order. Spikes again. Then the food arrives. And halfway through the meal you're already scrolling again. Your brain's chemical engine isn't focused on savoring, it's focused on what's next. Even romance falls victim. The chase, the mystery, the will they won't they. That's peak dopamine. Once things stabilize into routine, your chemistry settles. And unless you deliberately add novelty, surprise, or emotional spikes, your interest quietly fades. Not because you don't love the person, but because your neurobiology craves motion, not comfort. Let's pause on that for a second. It's unsettling, isn't it? That even love can fall prey to chemical boredom. That your deepest relationships, achievements, and desires can feel muted, not because they're flawed, but because you've adapted. Because the dopamine train already left the station, and yet you still ride it. Because what's the alternative? Sit in stillness? Wait for contentment to float in uninvited? That's not how you're built. You want peaks. You want the thrill of the almost. And unfortunately, the market knows this. Your economy is now built on dopaminergic manipulation. Every ad, every app, every click is designed not to satisfy you, but to keep you anticipating. Because an engaged brain is a profitable brain. So what do? You can't live without dopamine. It drives everything from brushing your teeth to inventing rocket ships. But you can become more aware of its games. You can notice when you're craving versus when you're truly enjoying. You can interrupt the cycle. Here's a small but powerful habit. Pause during pleasure. When something feels good, stop and let yourself really feel it. The warmth of the sun, the taste of your coffee, the texture of the bed sheets right now. This doesn't spike dopamine. It activates a different system entirely. Serotonin, the neurochemical of contentment. Dopamine says, go get it. Serotonin says, you already have it. And serotonin doesn't desensitize as quickly. It builds, it deepens, it anchors, but it's quieter. It doesn't flash like dopamine. It hums, and to hear it you need to slow down, to choose presence over pursuit. That's the irony. The more you chase happiness, the more it runs. The more you pause, the more it finds you. Now let's not pretend this is easy. You're a modern mammal in an overstimulated world. Slowing down feels like laziness. Stillness feels like failure. But remember, the system pulling your strings wasn't designed for abundance. It was designed for survival. And now that you're safe, maybe, just maybe, it's time to retrain that system. Because in the end, it's not about cutting dopamine out. It's about not letting it drag you like a hungry ghost across a buffet of empty promises. You can enjoy the chase, just don't mistake it for the prize. Let's say you've just had the best week of your life. Maybe you nailed a huge career win. Maybe your love life is finally thriving. Maybe you slept well. Your skin cleared up. And someone even complimented your handwriting. You're floating. Everything's clicking. The universe has finally aligned. This must be the new normal, right? Not so fast. Because here it comes again. The great emotional gravity known as the set point. That invisible psychological thermostat dragging you back to your baseline mood. Whether you're basking in euphoria or reeling from despair, give it time and you'll drift back to your usual mental climate. This is hedonic adaptation, the homeostatic undertow of your emotional life. And it's not personal, it's design. You live in a body that doesn't want you feeling too good or too bad for too long. Your nervous system is like an overprotective parent. Great, you're happy, but let's not get carried away. So even after a windfall, a breakthrough, or a moment of bliss, your brain gets busy recalibrating. It's not cruel, it's cautious. Mainstream science backs this up. Studies show that most people have a relatively stable happiness set point, like a default emotional volume knob. Major life changes, both good and bad, rarely shift this for more than a few months. Marriage, divorce, job loss, even winning the lottery. Within a year, people generally revert to their previous levels of happiness. You worked for the promotion, chased the thrill, finally made it, and yet the sparkle fades. It always does. Not because your dreams were unworthy, but because your biology is constantly deflating the highs and cushioning the lows. Homeostasis doesn't play favorites. It just balances. And this doesn't just apply to mood. It happens with lifestyle upgrades too. Buy a new car? You'll admire it for a week, maybe two. Then it becomes background. Move into a bigger house? After a month, it's just where the fridge lives. Your senses dull with repetition. That's hedonic adaptation at work. Quirky tidbit. Researchers studying paraplegics and lottery winners found something surprising. Within a year, both groups returned to roughly the same levels of day-to-day happiness. You read that right. Losing the use of your legs and suddenly becoming a millionaire may have different short-term emotional arcs, but long-term, they level out. Of course, this doesn't mean circumstances don't matter. Chronic stress, abuse, or sustained poverty can erode well-being. But for the average person, most emotional swings are temporary. The pendulum always swings home. Still, scientists argue about how fixed this set point really is. Is it genetically locked in like eye color? Or is it more like a muscle malleable with enough effort and training? Some say mindfulness, gratitude, or cognitive therapy can nudge the baseline upward over time. Others argue that change is limited, like trying to raise the ocean with a cup. But regardless of who's right, you've probably felt the pattern in your own life. Think back. Remember how exciting your first smartphone was? The way you marveled at the screen, the apps, the magic of instant connection. Now it's just a slab of glass you use to check the weather and ignore texts. Your emotional response faded. Not because the phone changed, but because you did. That's the cost of progress. Every solved craving creates a new void. You adapt, you normalize, you crave again. It's like hiking uphill on an escalator, moving downward. You keep climbing, but the view barely changes, and that's exhausting. Until you realize the goal was never to arrive. It was to stay moving. So what's the alternative? Give up joy? Resign yourself to emotional beige? Not at all. But it does mean redefining what happy actually means. See, the modern narrative tells you happiness should feel like fireworks, laughter, vacations, and wild success. But those are spikes, peaks, and they're unsustainable by design. If you chase that kind of high 24/7, you'll burn out, or worse, numb out. But what if happiness isn't supposed to feel like a sugar rush? What if it's more like a quiet stability, a gentle hum of okayness? What if real joy is closer to calm than excitement? That shift alone can change everything. Because once you stop treating your emotional state like a broken machine in need of constant upgrading, you can begin to notice the small, durable pleasures, the soft ones, the slow ones, the ones your dopamine-addled brain usually skates right over, like warm socks fresh from the dryer, or the sound of distant thunder when you're safe indoors, or the moment your head hits the pillow and gravity becomes kindness. But here's the trick. These pleasures don't announce themselves. They whisper. And to hear them, you need to stop chasing peaks long enough to notice the plateaus. That doesn't mean you should stop striving. Ambition isn't the enemy. But when ambition becomes your only mood regulator, you start mistaking hustle for healing. And that's when homeostasis becomes your quiet saboteur, flattening your victories until they feel like chores. So how do you live with this invisible set point? You stop treating it as the enemy and start treating it like a dance partner. Let it pull you back down when you rise too fast. Let it lift you gently when you fall. Learn its rhythm, its timing, its slow recalibrations. Because when you understand that even your worst days are temporary, and your best ones are too, you stop clinging, you start flowing. And ironically, that's where peace lives. Not in defying the set point, but in befriending it. Not in escaping homeostasis, but in working with it. Because when you stop chasing forever happy, you make room for something deeper. A quiet joy that doesn't need to shout. A contentment that doesn't crash. A feeling not of winning life, but of being okay inside it. Even when the highs fade. Even when the sparkle dulls. Even when the silence returns. Let's set the scene. You're finally on vacation. Somewhere breathtaking. The air smells expensive. You've got a cocktail in one hand, a breeze in your hair, and a suspiciously comfortable robe wrapped around you like wealth's whisper. You close your eyes and think, this is what I needed. But 3 days later, you're checking emails. Your partner is irritating you with the way they chew their toast. The minibar seems like a ripoff. You're bored. Welcome to one of the cruelest tricks your brain plays on you, the fading of paradise. You see, your nervous system was never built for prolonged bliss. In fact, the more perfect something is, the faster your senses flatten it. This is called the hedonic treadmill. The idea that no matter how much pleasure you gather, you quickly return to your emotional baseline and start craving again. It's not your fault. It's not the hotel's fault. It's how homeostasis keeps you from overdosing on happiness. Because too much of a good thing, your body treats it like a threat. That's not an exaggeration. Homeostasis sees extremes, whether it's ecstasy or agony, as potential disruptions to balance. The same system that regulates your blood sugar also modulates your mood. It's all about stability, even if that means sacrificing your euphoria. Mainstream science fact. Studies have shown that frequent exposure to enjoyable experiences like gourmet food, luxury items, or even positive affirmations diminishes your sensitivity to those same stimuli. Psychologists call it pleasure satiation. The more often you stimulate your reward system, the less reward you feel. It's why your third slice of cake is never as good as your first. Why new clothes lose their thrill by next week. Why even the most luxurious bubble bath eventually just feels like water. Here's a fun and slightly ridiculous fringe tidbit. In ancient Egypt, high-status guests were sometimes served exotic delicacies, laced with bitter herbs. Why? To enhance the perception of pleasure by creating contrast. Imagine ruining the first bite just to heighten the second. They understood something modern marketers forgot. Pleasure without contrast gets boring, fast. So here's the real question. If pleasure is so fleeting, why do we keep chasing it? Because your brain is addicted not to pleasure itself, but to the newness that triggers it. You crave novelty, not because it's always better, but because it temporarily resensitizes you. A new song, a new flirtation, a new app, a new outfit. all trick your dopamine system into thinking, this time the reward will last. It never does. But for a moment you believe again. It's like emotional Groundhog Day. You repeat the same cycle. Want, get, adapt, want again. It doesn't matter whether the get is a new job, a vacation, a relationship, or a tub of pistachio gelato. Once you have it, it dulls. So you run. But you're not running toward pleasure. You're running from neutrality. And neutrality for a dopamine-driven brain feels like death. This is where things get dangerous. Because when the simple pleasures stop working, you up the dose. You go from 1 glass of wine to 3, 1 show to 10, 1 compliment to constant validation, 1 purchase to a shopping spree. Not because you're greedy, but because your hedonic treadmill is speeding up and you're trying to keep pace. Scientists still argue how much of this is nature versus culture. Some say modern life is simply too stimulating, designed to burn out your pleasure centers faster than evolution can adapt. Others believe we've always been this way, that ancient humans just had fewer buttons to press. Either way, you're here now with a brain built for scarcity, dropped into a world of infinite novelty, and you're expected to self-regulate. Good luck. Unless you try something radical, you stop trying to escalate pleasure and start learning to reclaim it. Here's how. Try sensory fasting. It's not just about food. You can apply the principle to anything. Take a break from your usual hits. Music, social media, sugar, even small talk. Give your brain a moment to reset. The first few days, agonizing. But after a while you'll notice something odd. A glass of water tastes rich. A walk feels thrilling. Boredom itself starts to shimmer. You've resensitized. You've stepped off the treadmill. Another tactic, contrast engineering. Add discomfort deliberately. Yes, really. Go for a cold shower. Fast for 16 hours. Hike until your legs ache. When you return to normal pleasures, they bloom again. Like those bitter Egyptian herbs. Discomfort sharpens sensation. Your nervous system thrives on difference, not constant bliss. Still skeptical? Try this. Go to your favorite place in silence. No photos. No music. Just notice. Breathe. Engage your senses like it's the first time. You'll feel the tiniest uptick. That's your baseline shifting. Not through force, but through presence. Because the goal isn't to be constantly thrilled. The goal is to be thrillable again. And you can't do that if you're overloaded. Just like a tongue burnt by hot soup can't taste the next spoonful. Your overstimulated mind can't register joy. You've got to cool down, reset, create the contrast. Homeostasis needs to work its quiet magic. This doesn't mean you have to renounce pleasure. Just stop expecting it to last forever. Treat joy like the tide, something that comes, stays, and leaves. Let it wash over you and then let it go. You're not broken for feeling bored in paradise. You're human, and your brain, brilliant as it is, wasn't built to live in a non-stop highlight reel. It was built to survive long enough to seek the next good thing. That was enough, until now. So maybe it's time to redefine what a good life feels like. Not always ecstatic, not always exciting, but rich with contrast, marked by rhythm, and grounded in the kind of peace that doesn't depend on 5-star resorts or perfectly chilled mojitos. Just you, your senses, and a willingness to feel again, even if that means feeling less, so you can one day feel more. You've probably heard the phrase, no pain, no gain, maybe from a sweaty gym coach, or a relentless productivity guru. But the truth is, they're not entirely wrong. In fact, pain, physical, emotional, even existential, isn't just a side effect of life. It's a built-in feature of how you experience pleasure. Without it, joy wouldn't even register. Think of it like this. Pleasure and pain are not opposites. They're partners in a delicate dance choreographed by your nervous system. One sharpens the other. Without hunger, food tastes flat. Without loneliness, affection feels mild. Without failure, success is just a shrug. Your entire reward system depends on contrast, and contrast requires discomfort. Homeostasis, once again, plays the quiet orchestrator. Your body doesn't just manage your internal balance like a chemical accountant. It builds sensitivity through fluctuation. That means it needs dips so it can appreciate the peaks. Constant pleasure numbs the system, but intermittent challenge, that resets the scale. Let's get anatomical for a second. Your brain has two primary systems at play here. One for appetitive motivation, seeking rewards, and one for aversive motivation, avoiding harm. When these systems are in balance, you feel alive, engaged, sensitive. Too much pain, you shut down. Too much pleasure, you flatten out. This is why people who overindulge in comforts, yes, even emotional ones, often feel strangely depressed, not because anything is wrong, but because their inner signal detectors are dialed down. It's sensory blunting. Mainstream science fact: the opponent process theory of emotion, first proposed in the 1970s, suggests that every emotional high is followed by a contrasting low, and vice versa. It's your brain's way of recalibrating to a steady state. Think of it like emotional rubber banding. A thrill is always followed by a come down, and the deeper the thrill, the longer the snapback. You've lived this: the post-vacation blues, the weird emptiness after a big party, the crash following great news. It's not a flaw, it's neurochemical bookkeeping. But here's a curious, lesser-known tidbit. Ancient warriors and religious ascetics understood this intuitively. They engaged in deliberate pain rituals, fasting, solitude, cold exposure, flagellation, not out of masochism, but to resensitize their nervous systems, to sharpen their access to joy, clarity, transcendence. Pain was their tuning fork. Now don't worry, I'm not suggesting you retreat to a desert and survive on cactus juice. But I am suggesting this: pain, in small doses, is good for you. Scientists still argue about the optimal balance. How much discomfort does it take to maintain sensitivity? What kind of pain enhances well-being instead of breaking it? The answers are still fuzzy, but the pattern is clear. Some discomfort isn't a bug, it's a feature. So what kinds of pain help? First, there's physical discomfort. Exercise, cold showers, fasting. When applied mindfully, these practices increase endorphin sensitivity and reset your reward circuits. Ever noticed how amazing water tastes after a sweaty run? Or how good a hot meal feels after skipping breakfast? That's homeostasis resetting the volume dial on your senses. Then there's emotional pain. Vulnerability, honesty, failure, rejection. These sting, but they stretch your emotional bandwidth. They build depth. Without them, your joy becomes brittle, surface level, like smiling through a glass wall. And finally, existential discomfort. Those moments when you question everything, when meaning feels out of reach, when the universe stares back in silence. Believe it or not, these moments expand your capacity to feel, to appreciate, to wonder. They may not be pleasant, but they are profoundly human. Here's the plot twist. When you try too hard to avoid pain, when you numb, scroll, snack, suppress, you also mute your access to pleasure. You're not just avoiding suffering, you're shrinking your sensitivity to life itself. Comfort becomes a cage. You might not notice it at first. Your life looks good on paper. No big drama, no sharp edges, but something's missing. A kind of emotional texture. The ability to be moved, shaken, stirred. You've flattened the curve, but in doing so you've lost the peaks and the valleys. It's like trying to appreciate a symphony on mute. So how do you get that texture back? By gently, and I do mean gently, welcoming discomfort back in. Start small. Skip the elevator. Have a difficult conversation. Try silence for an hour. Let your stomach growl before dinner. Sit with a craving instead of reacting. These aren't punishments, they're reminders. sensory breadcrumbs back to your full range of feeling. It's not about suffering for suffering's sake. It's about making room for more contrast. Because here's the strange truth. Pleasure doesn't just feel good. It feels earned when it follows pain. A soft bed after a long hike, a warm hug after a hard day, a laugh after a cry. Your body registers these moments more deeply because they emerge from imbalance, not in spite of it, but because of it. You can't game this system with hacks and hacks alone. You have to feel it. Let discomfort stretch you. Let it prepare you. And when pleasure arrives, it won't just be nice. It'll feel like home. There's a war happening in your brain right now. On one side, your ancient primal urges, the ones that evolved when food was scarce, danger was everywhere, and survival meant eating, mating, and running from predators. On the other side, algorithms, screens, sugar, porn, push notifications, and streaming services. Guess which side is winning? You were built to respond to natural cues: hunger, thirst, warmth, pain, affection. But now those cues are being simulated. Your instincts, once vital for survival, are being hijacked by modern systems that know exactly how to press your buttons. Literally. Food, sex, screens. These are the three pillars of your pleasure circuit. And in the past, you had to earn them, find them, work for them. Now, you tap, swipe, scroll, and it's all delivered in hyper-concentrated doses, like synthetic lightning bolts zapping your reward system, over and over again. Let's start with food. In nature, sweet and fatty things were rare. A ripe fruit, a hunk of animal fat. These were jackpots. So your brain evolved to reward them like gold. Fast forward to today. You walk into a convenience store and every shelf is stacked with flavors that your ancestors would have fought to the death for. But now you just tap your phone, order a triple chocolate lava cake, and it arrives in 15 minutes with plastic cutlery and a paper napkin that says treat yourself. Mainstream science fact: ultra-processed foods engineered to be salty, sweet, and fatty hijack your dopaminergic pathways far more intensely than natural foods. The result? You eat more, feel less, and get trapped in a loop of craving with diminishing returns. And it's not just food. Enter sex. Not actual sex. Simulated intimacy. The rise of hyper-curated dating apps, explicit content on demand, AI girlfriends, seductive ads, all designed to tease your reward system without the vulnerability, awkwardness, or emotional messiness of real connection. Remember, your ancestors had to flirt, impress, dance, risk rejection. That vulnerability meant something. It made intimacy potent. Now, you swipe, you scroll, you watch, and your brain still fires like you've succeeded, except nothing real happened. Over time, the system breaks. Quirky tidbit: there's a growing subculture online called dopamine detoxers, people who intentionally abstain from porn, junk food, social media, even music for days or weeks to reset their pleasure tolerance. Some of them claim that by the end of the detox, drinking water feels euphoric. Scientists still debate whether dopamine can truly be reset like a phone battery, but the subjective results are hard to ignore. People feel more alive, more sensitive, more human. Now let's talk about the biggest hijacker of all: screens. Your phone is a dopamine casino. Every ding, buzz, like, and scroll delivers a tiny, unpredictable reward. This unpredictability, known as intermittent reinforcement, is the same system used in slot machines. You don't win every time, but the chance you might, that's the hook. Apps, social feeds, video platforms, they're not just entertainment. They're carefully engineered to exploit your primal reward circuits. Your brain didn't evolve to handle this level of stimulation, so it burns out, flattens. You feel wired and tired at the same time, overfed but undernourished, like eating a full meal made of air. And here's the kicker: the more you indulge in these artificial highs, the less appealing real life becomes. A walk without headphones? Boring. A conversation without a screen nearby? Distracting. A meal without a photo? Forgettable. You're not just distracted, you're disoriented. Your baseline has shifted so far, you can't feel the simple stuff anymore. It's like turning up the volume so loud that silence becomes terrifying. But guess what? You can reclaim your senses. It doesn't mean you need to become a monk. You don't have to burn your phone in a ceremonial cleansing, but you can start noticing where your instincts are being manipulated and take small steps to bring them home. Try this. Go one day without background noise. No podcasts, no music, no videos playing in the background while you eat or walk or brush your teeth. Just you, your thoughts, and the actual world. It'll be uncomfortable at first, but you'll notice strange things. The crunch of your shoes on pavement, the sound of your own chewing, the creak of your bones when you stretch, the little things that screen life mutes. That's not boredom, that's resensitization. Or this, eat a meal with no distractions, no scrolling, no multitasking, just you and the food. Chew slowly, taste deeply. Halfway through you might realize you were never really tasting before. You were just consuming. Same goes for touch. Hug longer. Sit with silence. Look someone in the eyes when they speak. These aren't big acts, but they're anchors. They remind your nervous system, this is real. This is what we were made for. The world will keep offering you artificial hits, but you don't have to keep saying yes, because every yes comes with a hidden cost, a dulling of your internal instruments, and those instruments, the ones that feel love, wonder, comfort, and joy, they're worth protecting. Here's the hard truth. Hyper-stimulated pleasure isn't actually pleasure. It's escape. It's noise. It's fast food for your feelings. But real pleasure? It's slower. It's subtler. And it often comes after a little resistance. After a walk. After a pause. After you put the phone down and just exist for a while. So next time you feel the pull, one more scroll, one more bite, one more click, pause. Ask, is this real pleasure? Or just a shortcut that's left me numb? Because shortcuts may feel good, but they never lead you home. Let's say you found something that gives you real pleasure, not the cheap stuff. This one feels deep, transformative, euphoric even. Maybe it's a drink that warms your entire chest, a pill that lifts your brain like helium, a lover who makes time disappear, or a glow on your phone screen that seems brighter than the room you're sitting in. You're not chasing anymore. You've arrived, right? Not quite. Because here's the twist no one warns you about. When you flood your system with pleasure, your body fights back, and what starts as a miracle begins to rot at the edges. Welcome to addiction, not as a moral failing, but as a homeostatic revolt. Addiction isn't about weakness. It's not about being out of control or indulgent or lazy. It's about balance gone rogue. A system built to regulate now forced into overdrive, clawing its way back to normal as your chemistry slides further and further from baseline. Let's break this down. Every time you engage in something pleasurable, your brain releases dopamine. But remember, homeostasis hates spikes. So when dopamine surges, your body doesn't just sit there. It responds. It pushes back. It activates mechanisms to reduce the flood, to re-establish balance. This includes downregulating receptors, increasing tolerance, and creating the emotional equivalent of static, irritability, craving, restlessness, emptiness. You don't notice at first. You just reach for more of the thing. But over time, more gives you less. The sweetness fades, and what once felt like pleasure now feels like relief from withdrawal. That's the shift. You're no longer using to feel good. You're using to feel normal. Mainstream science fact. In addiction, your baseline dopamine levels actually drop over time. This means the absence of the substance or behavior creates a negative state. Not because your life got worse, but because your neurochemistry adapted to expect more stimulation than it can now maintain. This isn't limited to drugs or alcohol. It happens with sugar. Gambling, porn, work, social media, validation, even exercise. Anything that gives your brain an exaggerated reward can trigger the same process. Because the system doesn't care what the source is, it only cares how far from homeostasis you've wandered. Quirky fact: some studies on rats show that sugar activates the brain's reward center more intensely than cocaine. And unlike cocaine, sugar is legal, cheap, and hidden in 80% of the food you eat. So yeah, your cravings are understandable. Now here's where things get painful. The more your brain fights to restore balance, the more you feel like you're falling apart. You blame yourself. You say, I'm just not disciplined enough. I have no willpower. What's wrong with me? But the truth is, you're dealing with an overcompensating system doing its best to reset, even if that reset feels like a breakdown. And scientists still argue about the best way to fix it. Is abstinence the answer? Total removal of the stimulus until your brain rebalances? Or is it moderation, slowly recalibrating your relationship with the substance or behavior? Some say cold turkey resets the fastest. Others claim it shocks the system and leads to relapse. What's clear is this: healing isn't just about stopping the pleasure. It's about rebuilding the ability to feel it in small, natural ways again. And that takes time. Imagine you've been listening to music at full blast for years. Now you turn it off. At first the silence feels unbearable. Then slowly you start to hear the clock ticking, your breath, a bird outside. Eventually soft music moves you again. That's your emotional sensitivity returning. The silence isn't punishment, it's recovery. But here's where addiction gets clever. It convinces you that the thing hurting you is the only thing that can save you. That without the hit, the scroll, the glass, the escape, you'll fall apart. It promises comfort, while secretly raising the price. And homeostasis plays along, thinking it's helping. So how do you stop the loop? First, by not demonizing pleasure. Pleasure isn't the enemy. It's the distortion of pleasure. It's overuse. It's artificial amplification that causes the crash. Your brain was built for joy, just not constant joy. That's like running your engine at red line every hour of every day. Second, you have to tolerate the low. When you remove the stimulus, the crash comes. Boredom, sadness, aches. Your system will scream, not because you're broken, but because you're detoxing from imbalance. It's withdrawal, even if what you're quitting isn't a drug. Third, you need alternatives, real, slow pleasures. Walks, music, laughter, eye contact, sunlight. These don't spike your dopamine. They stretch your serotonin, your oxytocin, your endorphins. They're softer, slower, but they last, and they don't ask for more tomorrow. And lastly, you need to forgive yourself. You didn't design this system. You just woke up in it. Every swipe, every craving, every crash was a result of a brain doing exactly what it evolved to do: seek balance. You weren't greedy. You were trying to feel alive. Addiction is a survival mechanism gone haywire. And recovery is not about perfection. It's about reestablishing trust in your own chemistry. Trust that a walk can still move you. Trust that a deep breath matters. Trust that you don't need to burn your circuits to feel something real. You've been hijacked, yes, but you're not powerless. The same system that spiraled you out can also lead you back. Gently, patiently, with a quiet, stubborn kind of grace. One real pleasure at a time. You're standing in a room filled with choices. To your left, a minimalist white chair, a warm cup of tea, silence, and a well-worn book. To your right, a surround sound system blaring movie trailers, flashing lights, the smell of caramel popcorn, a dozen dopamine levers waiting to be pulled. One whispers, the other screams, and yet both claim to offer pleasure. This is the modern dilemma. Minimalism versus maximalism. And your biology is stuck somewhere in the middle, quietly wondering how it became a battlefield. Let's define them first. Maximalism says more is more. More color, more flavor, more experience, more comfort, more now. It's the Vegas buffet of lifestyles. Pile it on, fill every corner, no blank spaces allowed. Minimalism counters with less is more. It preaches simplicity, space, stillness, like a Scandinavian hotel lobby made of clean lines and existential yearning. And you're caught between those forces, part animal, part algorithm, part aspirational monk with a cluttered Amazon cart. Let's go deeper. Your evolutionary wiring loves maximalism. Why? Because you were designed for scarcity. Your ancestors lived on the edge of not enough. So when they stumbled on something abundant, berries, warmth, affection, they took all of it. That hoarding impulse got baked into your genes. It kept them alive. It keeps you filling digital carts at 2 a.m. But your regulatory systems, those beautiful homeostatic mechanisms, hate maximalism. They were designed to keep the body in balance. So while your instincts scream, yes, another scoop of ice cream, your pancreas says, we're shutting this down. Your pleasure circuits light up, but your sensitivity crashes. The more you consume, the less it satisfies. Mainstream fact: studies show that abundance leads to desensitization. This is called sensory adaptation. The more consistently you're exposed to a stimulus, the less impact it has. Not because the thing changed, but because your nervous system adapted. A cozy blanket that used to thrill you becomes just a blanket. Your brain tunes it out. Quirky tidbit: in Japan there's a concept called shibui, the subtle beauty of simple, unobtrusive things. A worn ceramic bowl, a plain cotton shirt. These aren't mistakes or placeholders. They are the point. The absence of excess becomes its own kind of richness. It's not just a style, it's a neurological strategy. So where does minimalism come in? It says, what if we stop numbing ourselves with too much? What if we choose just one flavor, one sound, one task, so we can actually feel it again? And scientists still debate whether this aesthetic movement is just a cultural trend. Some argue that minimalism appeals to burned-out brains as a desperate attempt to reclaim control. Others suggest it's a new kind of social signaling. I don't need to flaunt. I have enough. But here's the thing. Neither maximalism nor minimalism is the enemy. They're tools, and both serve a purpose. Maximalism can dazzle. It can overwhelm the senses just enough to break through emotional flatness. A fireworks show, a music festival, a crowded holiday market. These aren't bad. They remind you that you're alive. Minimalism, on the other hand, restores your capacity to notice. It invites you back into your own body, into the quiet, into slowness, into the kind of pleasure that doesn't shout but hums. The problem begins when one dominates, when your home becomes a showroom, when your phone is never silent, when every wall has a screen, every pause is filled, every plate is overloaded. You stop feeling more. You start feeling numb. But swing too far the other way, into sterile, self-denying minimalism, and life starts to feel empty, void of texture, austere. A perfectly made bed in a room no one enters. Pretty, but untouchable. You need both, the spark and the stillness, the symphony and the silence after, the fifth slice of cake, and the longing you feel when you go without it. So how do you balance the two? By using intention as your guide. Ask, am I adding this to feel more, or to feel something at all? Am I removing this because it's clutter, or because I'm afraid of the messiness of life? Minimalism is not about deprivation. It's about focus. Maximalism is not about indulgence. It's about immersion. Your nervous system thrives on contrast, on shifting gears, on moments of intensity, followed by moments of emptiness. Like music, a crescendo means nothing without silence before and after. And your life, it's just one long composition, written in sensory notes. So don't fall for the idea that more is always better, and don't worship the aesthetic of nothingness either. Instead, play the middle. Have days where your senses are drenched in flavor and color and movement, and days where you fold laundry slowly, in silence, marveling at the fabric. Let yourself get full. Then let yourself feel empty. That's how homeostasis works. Not as a punishment, but as a rhythm, like breathing, in and out. Fill and release. You were never meant to live in constant sensory saturation, and you were never meant to live in a white box. You were meant to dance between the two, one step loud, one step soft. And somehow, right there in the in-between, you'll feel alive again. Imagine this. You finally cracked the code. You did the inner work. You decluttered your life. You hit all your goals. You even started journaling unironically. And one day you sit on your perfectly curated balcony, sipping herbal tea, basking in the late afternoon sun. You've reached it, eternal bliss, Tima. No more cravings, no more chaos, just peace. But then, something strange happens. A quiet anxiety creeps in, a restless boredom. The tea tastes bland, the sun too bright. You miss the chaos, you miss the chase, you miss wanting something. Why? Because eternal bliss, true uninterrupted contentment, is a myth your biology won't allow. Not because you're broken, but because your system is designed to interrupt itself. You may reach a high, but homeostasis ensures you won't stay there. The very chemistry that makes pleasure possible also makes it temporary. It's not personal, it's physics. Mainstream science fact. Your brain is built on prediction error. It learns from difference, not sameness. If you feel the same thing for too long, your neurons stop firing as much. That feeling becomes normal. Your system no longer registers it as meaningful. So even if your dream life becomes real, it eventually becomes background noise. And the more intense the pleasure was at the start, the faster that reset happens. That perfect vacation feels like life-changing magic on day 1. By day 4, you're complaining about the Wi-Fi and eyeing the flight home. Your nervous system doesn't care if you're in the Maldives or a dentist's waiting room. If the stimulus doesn't change, it fades into psychological wallpaper. And here's a slightly wicked truth. You secretly like the climb more than the view. You think you want a rival, but your brain thrives on movement, anticipation, planning, imagining, working toward. Because while happiness is lovely, pursuit is energizing. Quirky tidbit. In studies of Olympic athletes, bronze medalists report greater life satisfaction than silver medalists. Why? Because silver is close to gold, so the gap hurts. But bronze feels like winning something. A psychological trick of contrast and expectation. Your happiness isn't based on outcome alone. It's tied to the direction you're moving. Now here's the unsettling part. If bliss lasted, you'd stop moving. And evolution hates stillness. Stillness makes you a sitting duck. Bliss makes you complacent. You wouldn't explore, invent, risk, or change. So nature made joy fragile, a flicker, not a flame. Scientists still argue whether there's any sustainable form of happiness. Some point to practices like gratitude, meditation, or acts of service, habits that generate low but steady positive emotions. Others claim true contentment comes not from feeling good, but from feeling engaged, even if that includes frustration or discomfort. It's a lively debate, but one thing's clear. Constant bliss isn't just unrealistic, it's unnatural. So if you're chasing it like a destination, stop. Instead, shift the question. Ask, what if happiness isn't something I reach, but something I pass through? Like a bird flying through a warm patch of air. Lovely, fleeting, and never the goal. You don't need to trap it. You only need to feel it as it happens. And then, let it go. Because the desperate attempt to make happiness permanent is what ruins it. The moment you start gripping joy too tightly, it squirms away. It becomes pressure, expectation, performance, and just like that, the moment's gone. So what's the alternative? Learn to savor the temporary. Instead of demanding that pleasure stay, notice it while it visits. This shift alone can change your life. You stop obsessing over perfect days and start appreciating perfect moments. A stranger's smile, the smell of rain, a friend's bad joke that still makes you laugh. These aren't peaks, they're passing sunbeams. And they're enough. They have to be. Because real happiness isn't a state, it's a frequency. And sometimes your receiver only catches it in short, clear bursts between the static. Here's a secret. The people who seem most content, they're not constantly happy. They've just stopped expecting to be. And in releasing that expectation, they find peace. They know that every high is a wave crest, that every laugh echoes, then fades, that even love evolves from fireworks to embers. The pressure drops. You exhale. You realize, I was never supposed to feel amazing all the time. You were supposed to feel alive. And aliveness includes wanting, waiting, laughing, aching, moving, pausing, and sometimes simply being. Not climbing, not optimizing, not fixing, just existing in the small, flickering miracle of right now. Even if right now is quiet, even if it's not thrilling, even if it's just you, sitting with yourself, sipping lukewarm tea under a sky that doesn't care how you feel. And somehow, that's enough. Let's talk about comfort. Soft blankets, heated seats, food delivered without leaving your couch, voice assistants that play your favorite music before you even say please. Life, for many, has never been so convenient, so low effort. And yet here you are, anxious, numb, restless. Why? Because the comfort that was meant to heal you might be slowly shrinking you. Modern life promises freedom from discomfort, but in doing so, it also removes the friction that gives life texture. That quiet tension that used to shape your days, gone. And without it, your emotional range narrows. You stop feeling as much. You're not suffering, but you're not exactly living either. Homeostasis has a role in this. Remember, its goal is balance, not pleasure. So when your life becomes a steady stream of convenience, your system adjusts. It treats comfort as the new baseline. And once that happens, what used to feel good now feels neutral. You're not elevated, you're numbed. Mainstream science backs this up. One psychological theory called reward prediction error explains that your brain registers pleasure when reality exceeds expectation. But when comfort becomes constant, your expectations rise. Reality rarely exceeds them. The thrill dies. Now a warm shower used to be bliss, but now, unless it's eucalyptus scented and accompanied by your favorite playlist, meh. And this is how comfort ironically becomes a trap. Not because it's bad, but because it becomes everything. And your biology? It doesn't like everything smooth. It needs edges to define shape. It needs resistance to generate strength. Comfort without interruption becomes claustrophobic. Ever binge a show until your brain felt like pudding? Ever scroll for hours and feel less relaxed after? You didn't lack entertainment, you lacked contrast. And without contrast, you begin to lose access to basic emotional clarity. Joy, sadness, awe, even hunger, all become whispers drowned out by the static of constant ease. A quirky historical example. In ancient Rome, the elite class became so obsessed with comfort and indulgence that they had servants feed them while reclining. Some even induced vomiting mid-banquet just to continue eating. But beneath the decadence, their society was fraying, because extreme comfort often signals a decline in vitality, not a rise. Scientists still argue whether today's comforts are improving quality of life or eroding it quietly from within. More people report having fewer peak experiences despite having more access to pleasure. Depression and anxiety are up, not down. Emotional resilience, lower. Something doesn't add up. Here's the quiet horror of modern comfort. It removes the need to stretch yourself. You no longer have to remember phone numbers, tolerate silence, wait in lines, cook your meals, or even walk to the store. And while these are minor things, they once served as emotional calibrators. small doses of friction that kept your nervous system sharp. Now, everything is frictionless, and frictionless lives become shapeless ones. So what happens when you remove all the challenges? You remove growth. Think of it this way. Muscles grow not from comfort, but from tension. Skin becomes weathered and wise in the sun. Trees grow stronger in wind. And your emotions, they expand when pressed. They deepen when challenged. They become real when contrast exists. And when comfort becomes a constant hum, you lose your peaks and your valleys. So what can you do? You don't need to renounce comfort entirely, but you do need to reframe your relationship with it. Instead of using it as a default, treat it like a reward. Let comfort be the after, not the always. Go for a walk before dessert. Write 3 sentences before opening YouTube. Sit in quiet for 5 minutes before you scroll. Tiny changes, big returns. You'll notice something almost magical. Comfort becomes rich again. You taste it. You feel it. Your system, now resensitized, sings with the pleasure you used to overlook. This is how you reclaim emotional range, not by chasing drama or chaos, but by reintroducing micro-challenges. A little heat, a little hunger, a little slowness. These small discomforts act like emotional kettlebells, light enough to carry, heavy enough to reshape you. And here's the real surprise. Discomfort doesn't just sharpen joy, it deepens empathy. You start to feel more for others. The pain you once dulled becomes a bridge. The quiet suffering you once ignored now moves you. You stop needing constant entertainment because your own inner life becomes enough. You realize that boredom isn't death. It's a signal. That loneliness isn't a curse. It's a nudge toward connection. That hunger isn't panic. It's presence. The body was never meant to be pampered 24/7. It was meant to engage, to stretch, to play, to endure, and then to rest. Comfort is the landing, not the launch pad. So don't fear ease. Just stop defaulting to it. Use it like salt, sparingly, intentionally, to bring flavor back to the rest of your life. Because when comfort becomes a cage, even gold bars feel heavy. But when it's a choice earned, savored, interrupted just enough by life's rough edges, it becomes what it was always meant to be. A soft place to land. Not the whole world. Just a pause before the next beautiful stretch. Let's rewind the clock. Not to the 1950s, but much further back. Think stone floors, smoky air, robes that itch, and the eerie hum of 100 chanting voices. Welcome to the ancient search for balance. Long before anyone had words like neuroplasticity or dopamine circuits, people were already asking the same question you are now. Why does pleasure fade? Why does suffering linger? And how do I live a life that feels right? Across cultures and centuries, different philosophies tried to answer this in their own way. But many of them converged on the same strange idea. To feel good, you must occasionally feel bad. Not out of punishment, but because discomfort clarifies pleasure. Stillness clarifies movement. And surrender, strangely enough, clarifies control. Let's start with Stoicism, that ancient Greek philosophy that's suddenly trendy in your social media feed. The Stoics believed that external pleasures are fleeting, and that true peace comes from internal stability. Sound familiar? They trained themselves through voluntary discomfort, skipping meals, wearing ragged clothes, imagining worst-case scenarios in vivid detail, not to wallow in misery, but to inoculate themselves against it. Their logic? If you can feel peace in suffering, then no external storm can steal your calm. Modern interpretation: controlled discomfort resets your pleasure baseline. Then there's Buddhism, a tradition that's not about happiness, but about freedom from suffering. Buddha taught that all suffering comes from attachment, craving pleasure, fearing pain. The middle path? Detachment from both. Through practices like meditation, fasting, and mindful silence, Buddhist monks train their minds to witness cravings instead of obey them. They don't seek to feel amazing, they seek to be unshaken. Their joy comes not from sensory highs, but from clarity. Mainstream science now agrees. Mindfulness meditation deactivates the default mode network in your brain, the region responsible for constant narrative spinning and craving loops. When this network quiets, people report less anxiety, more presence, and yes, more subtle pleasure. Even modern biofeedback techniques echo this. These are technologies that teach you to regulate your nervous system, slowing your breath, steadying your heart, lowering your cortisol. Not through pills or apps, but through self-awareness. You literally learn to watch yourself stabilize. Quirky tidbit: there are monks in the Himalayas who can control their skin temperature to such a degree that they dry wet sheets on their backs in freezing weather. Scientists have studied this Gitamo meditation technique for years, and while they don't fully understand it, one thing is clear. Mastery of internal balance leads to a kind of quiet joy most people never feel. But let's not romanticize robes in caves. You don't need to retreat from the world to find emotional equilibrium. You just need to learn to pause, to listen, to notice when your systems are swinging too far into overstimulation or collapse. That's the real power these ancient systems offer. Pattern recognition. Here's a practical way to start. When you feel overwhelmed by pleasure, by panic, by craving, ask, what is my system trying to rebalance right now? That question alone shifts you from reactive to observant, from craving to curiosity. Let's say you feel burned out after a social media binge. Don't shame yourself, just observe. My brain is overstimulated. I need quiet. Then give it quiet. Or maybe you feel restless in stillness. You itch to do something. Instead of filling the gap with noise, ask, is this restlessness a signal of imbalance or withdrawal from novelty? Often it's both. You're not chasing peace anymore. You're creating conditions for it to emerge. And that's the difference between modern productivity hacks and ancient self-regulation wisdom. One says, do more. The other says, feel more, wisely. So what practices actually help in daily life? Box breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 4. Exhale for 4, hold for 4. This tricks your nervous system into a state of calm. Fasting. Even skipping a meal occasionally can resensitize your body to hunger and pleasure, clarifying signals dulled by constant consumption. Digital silence. 1 hour a day without screens. No background music. No scrolling. Just you and your thoughts. Terrifying, but enlightening. Each of these practices works not by adding more, but by removing interference. The signal becomes clear when the noise stops. But here's the deeper truth behind all this. You can't feel deeply if you're constantly reacting. You have to create space for depth. Because pleasure isn't found in piling more experiences on top of each other. It's found in reopening your sensitivity to what's already here. And that sensitivity, it's a muscle. You train it with stillness. You stretch it with discomfort. You nourish it with presence. This isn't about self-denial. It's about self-restoration. So when life offers you a moment of sweetness, don't devour it, hold it, let it melt. Feel the edges. And when life brings you discomfort, don't rush to erase it. Sit, observe. Ask what it's trying to recalibrate. Because maybe it's not punishment. Maybe it's a teacher. And maybe that teacher, in its quiet way, is showing you how to feel more alive without burning out. Let's turn the temperature down. Literally. You step into the shower and twist the dial to cold. Not cool. Not refreshingly brisk. Cold. Your body jolts. Your breath shortens. Your brain protests. Every cell screams, "What are you doing?" But something else happens too. After about 30 seconds, you feel awake, alive. There's a tingle across your skin, a kind of electric clarity, like your senses just woke up from a coma. And when you step out, towel off and breathe, it's not just your body that feels different, it's your mind. Welcome to the strange science of self-inflicted discomfort. Specifically, how pain, when chosen, can reset your internal reward system and bring back a clarity modern pleasure can't. We've talked about how overstimulation dulls your sensitivity. But here's the good news. You can reverse that. not by chasing more pleasure, but by strategically embracing pain. Ice bath, fasting, intense breath work, exercise that burns, silence that stretches. These aren't masochistic trends. They're neurological tools. Because when you lean into discomfort, your body doesn't just suffer, it reboots. Mainstream science fact: cold exposure, like ice baths or cold showers, activates the locus coeruleus, a brain region that releases norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter tied to alertness, mood, and focus. At the same time, dopamine levels can increase by 250%, with effects that last for hours after the cold ends. No app, no sugar, no screen does that. Even more intriguing, that dopamine rise doesn't come from pleasure. It comes from stress, chosen stress, which tells us something huge. Your brain doesn't always reward comfort. It often rewards effort. And this principle shows up again in fasting. When you go without food for even 12-16 hours, your body doesn't collapse. It becomes efficient. Your insulin sensitivity improves. Your brain increases production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps with memory and cognition. Quirky tidbit: in early clinical studies, intermittent fasting shows potential benefits for everything from mood disorders to neurodegenerative diseases. Ancient monks weren't starving themselves to suffer. They were unwittingly triggering systems we're only now beginning to understand. Same goes for exercise-induced pain. The moment you hit that wall, lungs burning, muscles shaking, brain begging to stop, you're flooding your system with endorphins. Your body is under attack, sure, but afterward, the recovery feels euphoric, clear, rested. And then there's breathwork, a strange hybrid of ancient spiritual practice and modern biohacking. Techniques like the Wim Hof method or holotropic breathing use oxygen manipulation to trigger stress responses in the body. You feel lightheaded, tingling, sometimes emotional. And when it's over, you feel purged, not because you added something, but because you took something away. Scientists still argue how exactly these self-imposed discomforts reset the reward system. Is it purely biochemical, or is there a psychological component? Something about choosing the pain and surviving it that changes our brain's reward map. But the effects are undeniable. People report increased clarity, deeper sleep, elevated mood, less anxiety, not because they added more pleasure, but because they recalibrated what pleasure means. That's the secret. Most of your problems with joy aren't about absence, they're about misalignment. Your brain's pleasure scale has been stretched, twisted, overloaded, and you're trying to feel something real through that static, but the dial is off. The signal's buried. So what do? You reset the dial. You turn down the noise. You embrace discomfort, gently, deliberately, temporarily. And then, you feel again. The first sip of warm tea after a fast, bliss. The warmth of your blanket after a cold plunge, magic. The taste of simple food, profound. The quiet after a long run, sacred. These aren't just experiences, they're reminders. Your nervous system, when given contrast, becomes your greatest ally. It starts to notice again, to open, to register joy not as an explosion, but as a vibration. And here's something beautiful. The same pain that resets your reward system also deepens your presence. Because when you're cold, hungry, tired, you are in the moment. You're not checking your notifications in an ice bath. You're not doom scrolling while your stomach growls. You are here, embodied, awake. And from that space, real pleasure can return. Not manufactured, not addictive, not loud, but real. Here's a practice for you. One morning this week, take a 2-minute cold shower. One day, skip breakfast, just to feel hunger. One evening, walk without headphones. 1 hour, sit in silence. No screens, no tasks, just breathe. It will feel strange at first, awkward, maybe even pointless. But over time, you'll notice your system stirring, sensing, feeling. You'll start to recognize that what you were calling boredom was actually overstimulation withdrawal, that what you thought was apathy was just a broken compass. and that you don't need constant pleasure to feel alive. You just need less distortion. You've been climbing an endless staircase of more. But the answer isn't higher. It's resetting the ground floor. And pain, carefully chosen, intentionally embraced, is the strange, sacred staircase back down, where life tastes good again, where time slows, where you remember, not just in your mind but in your body. This is what it means to feel. Imagine a future where you never feel sad, never get bored, never experience hunger or loneliness, or even a moment of discomfort. Every desire fulfilled, every emotion optimized, every blip of unease smoothed out by something smarter than you. Welcome to the strange and shimmering promise of pleasure engineering, the science and fantasy of hacking happiness at the source. If earlier generations learned to accept life's emotional rhythms, our era is trying to override them. Why endure the ups and downs when you can flatten the curve? Why wait for joy when you can manufacture it? Your biology says, let's find balance. Modern technology says, let's rewrite the code. From dopamine fasting to nootropics, biohacking to brain implants, you are entering a world where pleasure isn't just chased, it's designed. Let's start with the basics. People have always tried to manipulate their emotional states. Herbs, rituals, music, alcohol, prayer. But the 21st century version is far more precise. It's not about mood anymore. It's about modulation, adjusting your internal chemistry to meet external goals. Feeling tired? Take modafinil. Too wired? Pop some ashwagandha. Can't focus? Microdose LSD. Low motivation? Maybe some L-tyrosine, or a wearable that zaps your vagus nerve. Mainstream science fact. Transcranial magnetic stimulation (TMS) is already used clinically to treat depression by altering electrical activity in specific brain regions. It doesn't just make you feel better, it adjusts your emotional baseline, a literal reset of your internal thermostat. And that's just the start. Elon Musk's company, Neuralink, is working on brain-machine interfaces that could one day allow you to control devices and emotions with thought. Want to feel happy? Tap a button. Want to avoid heartbreak? Dampen that circuit. Sound futuristic? Sure, but the groundwork is already here. Quirky tidbit. In one early study, rats with electrodes implanted in their pleasure centers would press a lever to stimulate themselves thousands of times an hour, ignoring food, water, even sleep. They weren't seeking balance. They were trapped in the loop. Pure disembodied dopamine. Sound familiar? In many ways, modern life is already a soft version of this experiment. Endless scrolling, algorithmic feedback, filtered identities. You're not just chasing pleasure, you're being fed it, continuously, until your receptors blur and your emotions collapse into a kind of flat, quiet urgency. So here's the big question. If we can engineer perfect pleasure, should we? Scientists still argue. Some say yes. If we can eliminate suffering, why wouldn't we? Imagine a world where mental illness is obsolete, where loneliness is optional, where joy is programmable. Others warn, remove discomfort, and you remove meaning. Pleasure without context becomes static, and meaning, unlike mood, requires contrast. A life without lows might not be better, it might just be narrower. Because the human experience isn't just about feeling good, it's about feeling deeply, and depth requires shadows. But let's not get too abstract. Even without implants or neural zaps, most of us are already beta testing pleasure engineering every day. When you control your light exposure to sleep better, you're hacking your circadian rhythm. When you avoid sugar to manage mood, that's biofeedback. When you meditate, journal, or fast, you're manually adjusting your chemical state. And sometimes these tools work. They help you feel more grounded, more tuned in, less reactive. That's the beauty of mindful pleasure engineering. It respects your biology instead of replacing it. The danger lies in chronic manipulation, the belief that you can eliminate all discomfort with the right stack of tools, apps, and pills. That happiness is a system waiting to be optimized. That if you tweak hard enough, You'll finally arrive at a permanent good, but you won't, because homeostasis doesn't allow it. It's not a glitch, it's the guardrail. And every attempt to bypass it eventually loops back. The higher the spike, the longer the crash. The cleaner the hack, the more subtle the toll. So what's the healthy version of pleasure engineering? It's not about building a rocket to constant joy. It's about building a deeper sensitivity to the joy already available but obscured by noise, distraction, and overload. It's about sculpting your chemistry, not dominating it. Here's how you start. Track triggers. What actually brings sustained joy? What numbs you? Write it down. Build your own emotional map. Use tech as a mirror, not a crutch. Apps that help you sleep or meditate. Great. Apps that medicate your boredom 8 hours a day? Maybe not so much. Cycle your input. Introduce periods of sensory reduction. A day offline. A walk without headphones. A meal without screens. Give your nervous system space to recalibrate. Treat your nervous system like a garden. Water it. Rest it. Let it lie fallow. You don't get perpetual blooms by flooding it with fertilizer. Respect boredom. It's not failure. It's an emotional neutral zone. A place where deeper insights can surface if you stop trying to escape it. Because the ultimate hack isn't found in an app, a pill, or a headset. It's in your awareness. That moment when you pause, feel your body, notice the craving, and choose not to feed it immediately. That's not restriction. That's agency. It's the moment you stop outsourcing your aliveness and start reclaiming your chemistry, not to feel amazing all the time, but to feel human again. So here we are, 15 sections later, sitting quietly together at the edge of a truth you've probably always known, somewhere deep in your bones. You're not built to feel amazing all the time, and that's not a flaw. That's the system working. You are a creature of contrast, wired not for constant joy, but for movement between poles, between hunger and satiety, pain and relief, tension and release, dopamine and rest. You're not a machine. You're not a glitchy robot that needs fixing. You're a human being in a biological suit that obeys rhythms much older than culture, much deeper than logic. And when you chase constant highs, when you try to stack joy on top of joy, optimize every second, remove every irritation, you unknowingly sign up for numbness, because homeostasis always catches up, not to punish you, to protect you. Remember the first time you bit into your favorite dessert, the way your senses lit up like a firework display. That thrill wasn't the sugar, it was the contrast, the surprise, the novelty, the hunger that came before it. But if you had it for every meal, every day, it'd become background, and the pleasure would dull, not because it stopped being sweet, but because your system recalibrated. It had to. That's how you're designed. Your body, your brain, they're constantly smoothing the spikes, and they're not interested in bliss, they're interested in survival. Mainstream science fact. Your limbic system, the emotional core of your brain, works in concert with your prefrontal cortex to regulate both motivation and reward. These systems constantly adjust your drive to seek or avoid, but they also self-limit. If you overstimulate the reward loop, your drive shuts down. This is what makes chronic pleasure-seeking self-defeating. Quirky tidbit. There's a phenomenon called pleasure extinction. It's been observed in animal studies. When a stimulus is presented too often without variation, the subject stops responding, even if it's something they used to love. Translation. Your brain gets bored, fast. So what now? You could keep chasing, keep trying new hacks, new pleasures, new experiences, bigger doses, brighter screens. Or you could step off the treadmill, not forever, just for a breath, and start noticing the quiet pleasures you've been sprinting past, like the feeling of a breeze on the back of your neck, the sound of someone clearing their throat in the other room, the sip of water after a walk, a stretch that lingers, the taste of your own heartbeat in silence. Small things, but they come alive when you stop flooding the system. And when you live like this, not obsessed with staying high, not afraid of feeling low, you discover a third space, not pleasure, not pain, but presence. And in that space, something remarkable happens. Your emotional range returns. You cry easier. You laugh louder. You listen more. You feel with life. Instead of trying to escape or conquer it, you become responsive, not reactive, resilient, not rigid, alive, not addicted. And isn't that what you were really seeking all along? Not just to feel good, but to feel real, to feel fully here. And maybe that means letting the highs fade, letting the discomfort visit, letting your body return to its center again and again. Not because it's broken, but because that's what it does. It balances, it steadies, it waits for you to stop fighting so it can guide you back. So tonight, let yourself rest. Let the silence wrap around you without needing to fill it. Let your thoughts come without trying to fix them. Let your body hum in its quiet, living rhythm. Because you're not lost. You're just leveling. And now, we slow everything down. Let the words drift like fog in the background. Let the rhythm of your breath take the lead. Inhale, gently. Exhale, slowly. No rush, no trying, no goal. Your body knows what to do. You've traveled through your biology tonight, through dopamine highs and homeostatic lows, through ancient rituals and modern noise, through the quiet war between wanting and waiting. And now, there's nothing to solve. Let go of the question. Let go of the craving. You are not a machine that needs constant input. You are a wave, rising, falling, rising again, always returning. There is no perfect state to hold on to. No final version of you waiting on the other side of some hack or habit. There is only this moment, this soft hum of being alive, in between every thought, behind every breath. The world will still be there in the morning. But right now, nothing is required of you. Not joy, not performance, not even peace, just rest. So let your eyelids get heavier. Let your hands unclench. Let your thoughts wander like fireflies into the dark. And as your body sinks, let your mind follow downward, softly, into the quiet beneath the thinking. You are enough. You are safe. You are home. Good night.